Welcome to today's PETA Podcast. I'm joined by Sohaila. So Sohaila is part of the experts that we use here at PETA, or work with here at PETA, to continue to create that community of experts to support the businesses we work with. So welcome, Sohaila.
Thank you.
It'd be great to hear a bit about you and who you are and what you do.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you for having me, Fiona. So I am a coach and I work within the Wellbeing space, which is obviously a very, very large kind of area, but essentially it's supporting people to navigate through all of life's complexities, whether that's in work, in business, relationships, families, whatever that encompasses. As people, we go through a lot in our lives, and my role is to support people as they're navigating through these things.
Amazing. And you're Portsmouth based, so really important. It's important, always important that we work with local people as well, because that's our heritage, that's where we're from. So what are you doing currently then?
So currently, the way that I work is I work with individuals, so one-to-one with individuals. I also do a lot of couples work. I work with couples, and then I also go into businesses and work with employees where their employers are investing in their growth, investing in their self-development, and supporting them to have a confidential space within the workplace to speak to someone about anything that they want to speak about that's going on in their lives.
So that last part is really, really interesting. So we know now we're much more sophisticated in that actually people can't always leave what's going on at home, and they bring it into work. Businesses are having to really navigate working from home, people coming into work, and as I say, bringing in issues from across their lives. You know, we all live a life, and I think there's been a lot of talk in the past about work-life balance, and actually sometimes those boundaries do get blurred, and so I think it'd be really fascinating to understand how businesses can support that. And what's your view on that?
Yeah, so it is a really interesting topic, and a lot of the conversations that I'm part of are around when we hire somebody, we are hiring a whole person now. So we want somebody to be able to come to work and be productive and be present, but there is also some responsibility that to get that from somebody, we also have to appreciate they have a home life. They have other things that they are experiencing, that they are going through. And if we can support that to some extent, then actually the person that we've got in front of us at work can thrive a lot more than if they feel as though they're in these kind of different boxes and they've got to, they want to come to work, they want to be present, but if they've got things happening, or even if it's not big things, just navigating life generally, it's really hard for us now to compartmentalise. Just like if we're at home in the evening, a lot of the time people are looking at work emails, people are thinking about work. Everything is kind of bleeding into each other. So it's how we can support people to thrive at work, but also still look after and support their well-being outside of that as well.
Yeah, and so it's almost essential for businesses to invest in people. And we talk to businesses all the time, and people buy from people, and it's really important, isn't it, that people feel part of a community. What's really interesting, I think, is over the last few years, we've seen a lot of businesses, actually probably the last 10 to 15 years, investing in employee assist programs, and they have a really mixed response as to how effective they are. And we here at PETA also have an employee assist program. What's your view on those, and how do they work, and where's right, and where do you come into that whole piece of work?
Yeah, so I've heard similar to you in these mixed reviews, and I think that comes down to how personalised the support is. So for a lot of people, from as far as I'm aware, you might be entitled to a certain amount of, whether it's phone calls, whether it's face-to-face, quite often it's phone calls within a year, maybe they're half an hour long. Say you get 6 of them. That support is great to have somewhere that you can initially go and you can initially speak to somebody. But that personalised and continued support is often then not available. So for a lot of people, they think, what's the point? What's the point? By the time I actually get to speak to somebody, chat to them about what's going on, that support is maybe not going to be able to continue anymore. Where I come in is separate to that, and I come in almost in the sense of I'm your company's I don't work for your company, but I can be your company's coach for your employees. The reason why it works very well by me not working is because it's confidential and people need to feel comfortable to speak to somebody. They don't want to then see you over lunch when they've gone and spilled to you all of the things that are going on in their life. They want to feel like that is impartial. My boss isn't going to know. My colleagues aren't going to know. And actually, what I am very passionate about is giving people the space to talk. We can't just do that in 30-minute slots. We need time to build rapport, to build trust. And everybody's different. Not everybody feels comfortable to meet somebody and share everything in that first hour. Some people definitely do, but other people don't. So it's my job to help people feel comfortable over time, to gain that trust, build that connection between us, so then they have a really comfortable space to start sharing.
Interestingly, you've talked about being comfortable to have that first conversation. You talked about phone calls and virtual. So there's lots of people out there who have different expectations that have been put on them because of a variety of different things, whether that's gender, race, religion, lots of things, which may prevent them feeling comfortable to have that first conversation. So how do you deal with that? Because that's the biggest step, isn't it? To actually make the move to have a conversation with somebody.
It is. And this is interesting because some people obviously contact me themselves. We work individually. So they are somebody that has had to take some kind of step to work with me. Then I've worked in other situations where the employer has made this available, and people that wouldn't have, in their own words, normally fought to or approached me have thought, do you know what? I'm going to give this a try. And one of the companies that I work with, they are a very male-dominated company, and a lot of the people that I've worked with have said to me, I have never spoken to somebody before. One of my clients, he's in his 50s, and we were talking the other day, and he said, you're the first person in my life that I have ever spoken to in this way. And he wouldn't have gone, he says this himself, to go and approach somebody to speak to them in that coaching context. The hardest bit is finding somebody to speak to. And I always say to everybody I work with, our first call is just a chat. It is completely complimentary. We don't have any initiative other than to speak than to just chat, because what's really important is you start to feel rapport and trust for who you're going to speak to. There's lots of people out there, and different people align with different people, and it's my job to be my authentic self, to help other people feel comfortable to be themselves, and then you start to build that relationship.
Great. Okay, so they made the first step then. So virtual, face-to-face, how does that work? What works the best?
So a lot of people have in their mind that face-to-face must be the best option. I have really found that face-to-face or virtual, but on something like Zoom where you can see one another, equally works just as well. Some people feel a bit more comfortable that they're not physically there with you, so they're sometimes a little bit more open. Other people, they say, no, I definitely want face-to-face. And I've tried it where I offer people an option to do both. For some of my clients, they like to meet me first. They want to get a feel for me first, and then they say, actually, I could have a Zoom session this week, and we mix it up. I do have some clients that are adamant they only want to work face-to-face. That's absolutely fine. Just like I have some that I've never met them in real life, but it feels like I do. Because the Zoom experience still provides that, because you've still got that intimacy of it just being the two of you. You're talking about shared topics that stay between the two of you. And people are sharing with you things that are going on in their lives that they might not be speaking about in that depth with somebody else.
So we talked about business. So a lot of our community are business leaders, and they work with lots of people, and we hear from them all the time that the people are one of the most important assets. And if their team are all, pointing in the same direction, they know what they're doing, great stuff. How do you get businesses to invest in their team for something like mental health, particularly in a male-dominated environment, as you've mentioned?
Yes. Well, it's It's a mixture. So one of the male-dominated environments that got in touch with me, they contacted me, and the director of the company said, we have got mostly males working here, and what's happening is we are having situations where people are coming into work and there are outbursts, whether that's outbursts in anger at times, whether that's stress, whether that's overwhelm. People aren't talking, but we are seeing these signs, and we on the director's board, we actually don't know how to handle this. And what he said to me is, because he had come across me, he saw that I was a coach, he said, I feel like people here would feel more comfortable speaking to you in that coaching space, because it is about growth. It is about that forward momentum. We see celebrities have coaches. We see that there's people in the media that we look up to, work with coaches to further themselves. And he said, I think that language and that experience will be attractive to them.
It's not counselling, it's not therapy, it's coaching.
Yes. And the ironic thing is, there are obviously, once you get to know somebody, elements of these. I've got a therapeutic background as well in areas. So there are elements of things where I can hold people in these different spaces. But my role is always fundamentally as a coach. How can I help this person to grow, maybe to believe in themselves more? Maybe they've got a lot of confidence, but actually they're struggling to regulate. They don't know how to communicate with their boss or their partner or their children. Everything that I do is obviously personalised to the individual. And when employers do offer this to their staff, they're giving them a real gift for them individually, but also for them as a business. Because if everybody is starting to understand themselves more, regulate themselves better, that can only rub off on others in a positive way.
And so back to this business then, that's really interesting. So you went in, so how did that work in the business? So it's great when it comes from the leaders of the business, we want this to happen. How did you actually mobilise that then?
So what we decided is, if we just let them all know that I was available, nobody would probably use the service. So what we did is I went in for a couple of sessions, we had a meeting room, and he asked all staff to attend one of the sessions to just meet me. And we decided a Q&A probably wouldn't work, because we didn't think that we would probably get a lot of questions in front of everyone. So I stood there and I just essentially did a bit of a presentation, but a very relaxed presentation, a little bit about what coaching was, how it could maybe support you, some case studies, a really, really gentle kind of intro. And then what we did is we explained how it would work if you worked with me. We gave the details, and it was made very clear that any of the directors would know numbers of people that took this up, but they would never know names. They had a way to contact me. We had a way of me being able to be sure that this was this colleague and be able to do that. So we've done this whole process still by nobody necessarily knows unless the individual has told somebody who has worked with me. And that's incredible from that employer, because that involves so much trust into me as well as the employees, and they put a lot of trust in me also. Trust is huge in this, but for them that's worked extremely well. What is a shame at times is we can't then have those conversations where we can say, have you noticed this person's doing it? Because it's all confidential. But the employer, what was important to them was let them talk about anything. It doesn't have to be work. If it is work, fine. If it isn't, just let them be. We just want to provide that space because we want them to be okay. And also, of course, they want more productive days. They don't want people coming in feeling angry, not very present, not very maybe in that team building space. And actually, a lot of the things that people were bringing to the sessions were a real mixture. So I would be helping people support team dynamics that were, really frustrating them, but as well as talking about somebody that might be coming in and being in a bad place in their relationship at home, and we would talk, it mixes what we talk about, and from one session to another we can be talking about completely different things.
And so do you believe, or are you aware if that business has now had a reduction in sickness or increased productivity or anything like that? Did you get that feedback from them?
I have had some feedback, and I've spoken to the director, and one of the things that he also said to me is prior to us working together, they were having quite a lot of people joining and quite quickly leaving. And one of the things he had said is they seem to feel like now a much stronger unit and a much stronger team. There haven't been as many people coming in and leaving. And the actual feel within the office, which is obviously only his interpretation, but he has not seen these big outbursts like he'd seen before. And we can't talk about it further than that because I can't give any idea of
who, what,
where, when, which is a shame from that respect. But I know, and he knows from what we can see, that improvement.
It's really interesting. And as leaders, I remember working with a large company and we did a programme with them across all of their leadership. And I remember him saying, we won't get any tangible output, but what we'll see is people walking a little bit more confidently, a little bit taller, and things will happen. And sometimes you can't put an actual feel on it, but you can see it. And I believe leadership training is a lot about that as well. You can't always get, our team have increased their productivity from X to Y, but actually the business is happier, the people are staying. I mean, just keeping the workforce in post increases productivity because you're not recruiting. It reduces the cost of recruitment and training because then you can spend the training on developing people into different roles. So it sounds like, positive output.
Definitely positive. For me to be able to have conversations where a lot of them had said, I've not spoken to somebody before, or I've tried speaking to somebody through, we've spoken about other ways that people can speak, and I just didn't get this, someone truly in my corner, someone that I could really rely on. That for me is all the feedback that I need to know that this works.
Yes. And it's really interesting because I'd never considered it in the way that actually, so I have a coach that supports me in work, but actually the coach traditionally has always been in a work environment, how are we going to achieve the targets, how are we going to do this, but it's the whole thing. So having somebody coaching you in your life, why wouldn't you? It's not about, as I say, therapy and so on. So who looks after you then when you're having to listen and support these people? Because that's hard work, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And a lot of people ask me this. They say, how do you manage? Do you go home and do you feel absolutely exhausted? I don't. I get a lot of energy from seeing and knowing that this is having value and helping other people. But of course, I do need my own support. So for me, I have a few different options. I have my own coach that I work with on my life. So that's the person that I go to speak about the things that are going on in my life, in my business, in my head. That's the person that helps me with that. Then I also have, and this is a different person, my supervisor. So in the coaching space, we're not required to hire a supervisor, but I couldn't understand someone that wouldn't work with a supervisor. This is somebody that is trained within our profession, but that we can go to, that we can confidentially speak about the people, situations that we're working with. So we're not talking about other people and what they're sharing with us, but we're talking about how we've responded to things as a coach, and if there are things that we could do better. Yeah. How could we be stretched? Did we have a blind spot? Did we have a bit of bias there? Just because we've got a relationship with this person, have we made any assumptions? So my supervisor then helps me become a better coach with those blind spots. Right. And I think that's really important. Supervision within the therapeutic space is mandatory, but it's not within the coaching field yet. And it's something that I think should be. And within that, my supervisor also helps me when I've gone through and got all of my qualifications, but I'm always still adding to that. So I don't know if you've heard of the ICF, they're the International Coaching Federation, and I'm doing it's called PCC, which is Professional Certified Coach. certification. I've submitted all of my recordings. I've passed all of those. And the reason this is really important to me is because obviously AI has come into the space, and a lot of people say, well, people are using things like ChatGPT to solve the problems. And ChatGPT can help with some things. It can provide some answers. It can only, at the moment, coach up to a certain level, which is what an associate coach level. The qualification that I have now got is at the level that it cannot coach at. Which proves that us investing in ourselves and us going this extra mile, we're able to bring more to people when it comes to their whole life. So that's something that I think is also really important when you're thinking of working with somebody. You need somebody that has invested in themselves, but also has the right support behind them, because as they continue to grow, I will never stop learning and growing, but then I feed that more into my clients as I go.
I mean, that's incredible, and actually, it's just almost like a self-perpetuating circle, isn't it? Because we hear from people, and when I speak to business leaders all the time, particularly in these podcasts, they're saying the people are the most important. We need to invest in the people, and actually, this can sometimes be a blind spot. And we give the employee assist, as I say, which is a few phone calls, and so nothing wrong with that, and it serves a purpose. But there might be something deeper for some people. So that's really interesting. And as you say, the staff retention, remaining in a business, is immense for a business.
Yeah. I've also had when people have come to me by themselves, so individuals, they've paid for coaching themselves, but to actually help them decide how, I'm struggling at work. And so there's been other people that have their workforces wouldn't have known, but stayed in their positions because we found ways for them to find passion again in their work and find peace again in their work, which often people, after some time, challenge goes, passion goes.
Yeah, everything's a cycle, isn't it? We all have highs and lows and so on. And life's a journey, isn't it?
It really is.
Thank you, Sohaila.
No problem.